else? Yeah. All right, good evening, everybody. If you could stand and join us in a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. All right, hi, my name is Scott, and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to the Treasure Map meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is an open speaker meeting. We're glad you're here, especially newcomers. In keeping with our singleness purpose and our third tradition, which states that the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask that all who participate confine their discussion to their problems with alcohol. The AA Preamble, reprinted with permission by Grapevine Inc., Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting for our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. We want to send a special welcome to anyone here from out of town. If anyone's here from out of town, please stand and introduce yourself. Oh boy, all right. Well, you guys here, we'll just give you a round of applause. All right, good job. Welcome. Also, let's see here, if there's anyone here at the Treasure Map meeting for the first time, would you please stand and introduce yourself? If you're out of town, guys, feel free to stand up twice if you haven't been here. What's your name?
John.
Hey, John. Glad you're here. All right, is there anybody here? Oh, we got another one.
Steve, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Steve, glad you're here. All right, is anybody here at their first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous? No? All right, well, we're glad everybody's here, and keep coming back. So it says, okay, so let's go to the person I didn't ask to read how it works. Who do I get to pick for that? Okay, so tonight, give me one of your guys' names here.
Marshall.
Hey, Marshall, you want to read the 12, how it works from Alcoholics Anonymous. Welcome, Marshall. All right, so read through the ABCs here.
I'm Marshall. I'm an alcoholic. 12 steps. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaimed, "What an order, I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if He were sought.
Awesome. Thank you, Marshall. The 7th tradition states that every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. If you don't carry cash, you can fulfill the 7th tradition online at our website, treasuremapmeeting.com. We thank you for your support. Your donations to the Treasure Map meeting support all of our group's activities. In addition, they pay our rent, coffee, snacks, and literature. Plus, we happily support our local Sioux Falls Intergroup, South Dakota Regional District 5, statewide Area 63, and the General Service Office supporting Alcoholics Anonymous around the world. Now, please welcome John to read the 12 traditions, not the long form, please, as we pass the basket. Not.
This is the 12 traditions. I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you. Number one, our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2, for a group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3, the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4, each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5, each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6, an AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7, every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8, Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9, AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10, Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11, our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12, anonymity is a spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks, John. All right, so over here we've got our announcement table with any announcements. It doesn't look like we have any announcements right now. We've got our literature over there. You can stop by and see us at the break if you want to become a home group member, if you have any questions. And now I would like to introduce our short speaker tonight, who I just asked 2 minutes ago. So I'm asking Todd to share his experience, strength, and hope with us. And Todd, if you could just walk slowly so I can grab a few more chairs for these people in the back, I appreciate it. Welcome, Todd.
This is almost like a payback because I used to chair this meeting and I used to ask people about 2 minutes before the meeting too. I've given my story before and I thought, well, everybody's probably heard that, but half the people here are from out of town. So it'll be all new to you and that'll be good. My name's Todd. I'm an alcoholic. You're welcome, everybody. I'm glad everybody's here. Another great turnout. There always is. So I guess to start my story, I grew up on a reservation north of here. And I was introduced to alcohol probably around the age 14 is when I started drinking. Of course, I wasn't an alcoholic then, but the first drinks I had, I like just about everybody in here, it just did something to me. And at around age 14, I started having sex too. So that was a really good year for me. That I thought, wow. But I associated the two with that all the time. So, I had two purposes when I got a little older and started drinking and went to bars. First was to get drunk, and second was to hook up with somebody. And so anyway, as I got older, everything like the disease does, it just progressed. And I was a functioning alcoholic. I can't really say I ever lost a job because of my drinking. But I always had an ear to the ground where if there was any rumblings or anything about, he's hungover, or, he smells like a brewery, and, what do you think? Before they had the opportunity to let me go, I would leave. I never had a problem finding a job. Never had a problem finding a girlfriend. I mean, we don't. It's just funny about how that works. We just have a hard time staying with them or staying with a job or whatever because of our addiction, our drinking. And, I went through some time where I collected some DWIs. I think Robert probably, I got this from him, but it's, when I had my second DWI, the judge kind of looked at me and said, you keep this up, you're going to end up in prison. A normal person would say, yeah, maybe I should do something about that. But, me and my alcoholic mind, I started thinking what prison was going to be like because I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't ready. And by golly, the judge was right. I ended up in prison. And once I got out of there, it was just kind of like, boy, I gotta get better at this driving stuff, or who knows what's going to happen. And I quit going to the bars and just kind of isolated myself at home, and went for about 20 years, just daily drinker. I waited till after work and, would just drink as much as I could until I used the excuse that I needed to go to sleep. And so basically I would pass out and then wake up in the morning and or come to and just do it all over again. Get up, go to work. But it was always, about that 3:00 in the afternoon. It was like, man, I can't wait till the end of the day gets here so I can go get something to drink. I had many, many attempts on trying to control it, quitting, just the normal things that we do to try to figure out that we're not alcoholic. And I, changed geographically, moved away. Every time I moved, there I was, I couldn't get away from it. The last time I did my geographical change, I went to Alaska. I figured I'll just get as far away as I can. And I got into my apartment up there, and my addiction had already unpacked and it was waiting for me. And that just didn't work out. Things happened in my life. My dad passed away like 6 days after I got up there, and I just didn't stay up there very long and ended up coming back. I was only up there for about 3 months, but so when I got back, and it was probably a little before that, my drinking kind of went through 3 phases. First I drank to have fun, and I had a lot of fun. I didn't miss out on a whole lot. I mean, I'm here to tell you, it was a lot of fun. And my second phase was I lived to drink. Everything I did, it was surrounded around drinking. The obsession started to kick in, or that's pretty much all I thought about. And the third phase that I went through was I drank to live. And that's where it got bad. and I started to spiral down pretty heavy, to the point where if it wasn't for this program, the treatment center that I went through, my sponsor, I don't think I'd be standing here today. It started, I was drinking in the morning, I was drinking in the afternoon, and it was almost a necessity for me in the morning, just because, with the dry heaves and I was shaking so bad. I mean, I don't even think I could have brushed my teeth unless I had, 3-4 beers in me in the shower, just to get my nerves settled down and get rid of the dry heaves. And of course, by the time I got ready and everything, my wife would be sitting in the living room, and this was a daily thing. Sorry, I got so drunk yesterday. It won't happen again. And I was on my way out the door with already having, 3-4 beers in me. And I had like 5 different gas stations that I went to in the morning because I didn't want anybody to know that I had a problem. And it's funny, since I've quit drinking, I every once in a while I run into someone that either worked at that gas station or owned it or whatever, and they'll say, "Gee, we haven't seen you for a long time." And I go, "No, I don't drink anymore." "Well, we miss you." And I go, "I'm sure you do. I spent a lot of money in there." And I guess, what happened, I had an episode in my life where I fell and it looked like I was in a car accident. And I don't know really to this day what happened. While I was drinking, every once in a while, I'd feel a tap on my shoulder, on my head. And, and I think it was my higher power just saying, "Hey, you got to get a hold of this." And finally, I think he just got fed up enough where he just pushed me down. It was just I don't remember falling or anything. All I remember is people just helping me up. And so that took me about 2 weeks to get healed up from. And of course, the bar was open the whole time. I was within walking distance of one of the gas stations that I went to. And at that point, I'm just like, I don't care if they know or not. I would go and get my daily supply, and just walk back to my apartment and just sit there and drink. And after about 2 weeks of that, my wife came home one night and I said, "What was the name of that place that a friend had told her about, which was a treatment center?" And she gave me the name and the phone number and stuff. And I said, "I'm going to call there tomorrow." And so I called and wondered if they had a bed for me and stuff. And they did. And I said, "Well, I got something come up this weekend. It's going to take me a couple days to get my boat put in storage." So we agreed on a day that I'd be there. And, when I hung that phone up, I don't know, it was something just lifted off of my shoulders. And it just, I just said to myself, I said, "It's over. I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to hate every morning waking up and saying, Jesus, another day." So anyway, I made the commitment to go there, and I showed up there. My wife took me there, and your addiction's so kind of funny, how it works with your mind and stuff, that when she dropped me off, the last words that I said to her, I said, "This isn't going to work." And, the first 3 days that I was in treatment, they kept you really busy, but they gave you breaks and stuff. And there was a rock out by the waterfall that I'd go stand on for 3 days, every break we had, I'd go out and stand on that and just fight with myself that, how are you going to do this? You really think you can do this? How are you going to have any fun? You don't know how to live any other way. And I didn't know how to live any other way. It was the only thing I knew. And then finally on the 4th day, I'm like, man, I've listened to speakers come in and this program really works. I just need to find a different way to live. And so I kind of jumped in and started working the program and taking it seriously, made up my mind that I was not going to go back to the way I was. It was killing me. And, my addiction wanted me dead. And it was satisfied that I was drunk. It would wait until it could have the opportunity to kill me one way or the other. And so, like I said, by the grace of God and this program and working the steps that are in the book, all the answers are in there. If you just put them to good work and do like you're supposed to. My life since then is just, I can't believe how much better it is. You want to talk about having fun. I had a blast. And I remember it. And it's just, I've got a great group of people. I mean, if you'd have told me 5 years ago that, or even 2 years ago, that, you're going to hang out with a bunch of drunks and you're going to have a great time. I went, well, I'm doing that now. But recovered, people in recovery. And, we laugh. I didn't laugh anymore. I hear the birds. I didn't hear the birds when at the end there. I didn't pay any attention to sunrises, sunsets, full moons, no moons. So many things now that I'm grateful for. And it's been great. I just can't thank this program enough, and everybody in here. Robert's my sponsor, and I see some very familiar faces here, and I mentor now. I speak out at Tallgrass is where I went through my recovery at, and do the big book study out there. I've chaired this meeting. I chair another one at Southside. So it's recovery, unity, and service work, and keeping those three things. And basically, first thing I do in the morning is I just say nothing can happen today that's going to cause me to drink, and nothing can happen today that a drink's going to make better. And that's how I start it. And I say my prayers. I read my daily reflection. I meditate. I still struggle with meditation, but I do it, and I'm just so, and grateful for. There's so many things that I'm grateful for, and there's so many things that I take for granted that I should be grateful for. I have a very good friend of mine, and we actually, the last time I was fishing this year, I had him with me, and he's only got one arm, and he was watching me tie some stuff up and everything, and he goes, it's really nice to have two hands, isn't it? I go, it really is. And I got to be grateful for that, because it's something that I take advantage of. 2 eyes, 2 hands, 2 arms, whatever. It's just so many things that by the time my feet hit the floor in the morning, there's so many, you can't even count how many blessings that have happened in my life. they talk about the promises in the book, and they're in there. I mean, and they do come true. I haven't realized all of them yet, but I'm on the right path that I will. And being able to share and help others, that's the big change I came out with when I came out of treatment, was just my attitude. I was always a taker. What benefits me, and how can I get it? Because I'll figure out a way. And when I came out of there, it was like, I really want to help. I just want to be able to help people in any way I can. And so when I get asked 2 minutes before coming in, I'm in. I'll help. Because things happen, and it's just a lot better way, a lot better way of living. Scott, is that good enough? All right. Thanks for coming, everybody, and thanks for listening.
All right, thanks, Todd. We will take about a 10-minute break, maybe 15, come back at 1:45, and hear from Dave, who came down from Brookings. So thanks, and we'll see you after the break. I wasn't gonna call you back. I gotta look at my calendar. You got through November, or you have through December? Okay, so how about I find a couple of dates, like 3 or 4 Saturdays and next week? 8 o'clock, it's 8 o'clock, right? And how long do they talk? Okay.
Gonna try to follow this a little bit. Like I got a guy coming this week. He wants to.
Yeah, I don't want it. So when I go,
I'll get someone.
yeah, you can. Dave started. He speaks from Minneapolis, Omaha.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Dave Nope, short hair, suit. Yep. And he, so like Craig Boston, Joe Gentry, like they got pretty established person. Oh, it's the most I'm not New York. I mean, I'm telling you, I think not until I was Yeah, so Ann Roby's his mother, she's an Alan, Ann and Daryl are brother and sister. She's a pop. Yeah. And Matt's been sober now about 3 years. Yeah. Badass. I don't know if you're going with
Yeah, that's right.
He's a lawyer up in Washington. He's Joe's first cousin. So I was sober and playing poker with Joe. Yes. No.
Still, I'm keep it down.
It feels better because I was dreading the whole time. Very great, but like you literally say exactly what I said to him in a way. I'm like, I'm bored of it.
All right, we're going to get started in a minute here. All right, well, welcome back. Please help me welcome Dave from Brookings.
All right, thank you, Scott, and welcome to everybody. My name is Dave Roberts. I'm an alcoholic, and first I want to thank Scott for being here early to set this up for us to meet tonight, because I appreciate that. That was one of my first commitments in Alcoholics Anonymous, was being on the setup crew, and got to know a lot of people that way, and got involved in service. My home group is Foxhall Group in Brookings, South Dakota, and it meets on Tuesday night at 7 p.m. and it's an open speaker meeting as well. So anyone's welcome. We're always looking for speakers, so I know that's something that usually people love to raise their hand and do. So come on up and join us at any time. I know. I'd like to also thank Michael Donnelly for asking me to speak, and he's been up there to speak at our Foxhall group, and it's really been great. Also like to just kind of keep Marcia in our prayers, going through some of her health issues that she's going through, Michael's wife. But it's truly an honor to be up here talking to you guys. I didn't think that at all when I first walked into Alcoholics Anonymous. When I walked into my first meeting, I was so judgmental, and I thought you guys were just the goofiest of goofy people, and I was kind of right. But I didn't. I got sober at 22 years old, and I walked in, and the meeting that I walked into was a Foxhall group in Bellevue, Nebraska. I got sober in Omaha. And so there was several hundred people there, and all of them dressed like Scott and I. And I thought, I didn't see myself fitting with those people. But like Todd had mentioned, I remember in my first sponsor saying, someday you'll know many of these people, and you'll know a lot of their names, and you'll probably know a lot about what's going on in their lives. And I'm a slow learner. So last year I went back to get my 20-year medallion from that meeting. And as I looked out over the crowd, it's about the same size as it was then, it hit me. It was kind of a moment of clarity that I knew there's plenty of new faces, but I knew a lot of the people out there, and I knew their names, and I knew a lot about their lives. And I just, again, unfortunate it took 20 years to get to that point of realizing that I knew people like that, but it was true. And I think the important thing about that is that I did not believe that would be the case at all. I doubted and disbelieved everything that my sponsor was telling me when I first got sober. But just to give a little bit of backdrop about, I grew up in a pretty normal family. There were times where we had to, we'd get in the car with mom and go grab dad from the bar. But according to the stories I heard, that was just normal life. That was just part of the deal. They worked hard and kind of played hard. And quite honestly, that lifestyle really attracted me. My father and grandfather were big. You could go anywhere in South Omaha at that point and mention their name, and people would recognize them as being pretty tough guys, and unfortunately I didn't get their size, and I wasn't raised to be that way. And I appreciate that today. But at the time of growing up, I was, bitter about that my dad didn't, show me how to fight better. So I was really attracted to that. I at a young age, I couldn't wait to get old enough to be like that and go to the bar and, and drink and do those things. And I remember when, my mom and dad, they got into some pretty good fights when I was younger. And I remember one specifically where my dad came home and he would just, I don't know why, it just made me, he made me laugh so much when he'd come home really drunk. And he was just so nonchalant about it and laid back. And he come in and sat on the couch, and my mom was furious at him for being out again and missing whatever he missed. And she took an old Pepsi, that was where you recycle the Pepsi bottles. And man, I feel old when I say that. But and she grabbed it and threw it clear across the house, and it landed like on his head, right? And it didn't break, of course, or anything like that. But he turned around and grabbed that thing and threw it back at her and hit this curio cabinet, and it just like exploded. And this curio cabinet was very sentimental to my mother. It was her mom's that passed away when my mother was 8, so it was a big deal. But I'll never forget. Like, I was like laughing about that. Like I thought that was kind of funny. I thought it was kind of cool. It was like that sort of action or what have you was attractive to me. And now being where I am now, it's kind of interesting to see that I was attracted that way to that. But so I grew up fairly normal. I went to a religious education, kindergarten through 8th grade, and but I was always like I loved being destructive, and and we would I remember sitting in the pews at church and just pushing on them as hard as we could and breaking the little knobs that held the pews up and stuff, doing stuff like that I would look at any kid doing now and go, what are you thinking? Why would you do that? And especially in church. But that's just how I was. I was just, and I was around some buddies growing up that we were that way. We were into slingshots big time, and we went around the city and broke out any piece of glass we could see, no matter, cars, whatever it was. And fortunately I was able to make amends for some of that as I got sober. But, and so that's what, that's kind of what, kind of how I lived. I played sports, and that's really where I felt I felt where I belonged. And other than that, I didn't feel like I belonged necessarily. But playing sports and being on a team, I felt a part of. And so then I went to high school, and that's the first time where fear entered my life. I went to a Catholic high school at my freshman year, and I got really fearful. I mean, I just that kind of knot in my stomach really expanded at that point, and so I transferred. So it was my first geographic change of my life, and I transferred to another school, a public high school, and where I had more friends that went there, and it actually turned out to be a pretty good move. And made friends with guys on the baseball team, and for whatever reason, at 14 and a half years old, we all made a pact with each other that we would not drink and do drugs, and we were going to focus on playing baseball and being as good as we could be, and that sort of thing. And that lasted about, I don't know, a few months maybe. And the first time that I drank was with a upperclassman at one of his friends' house where people were of age that were buying alcohol. And the first time that I drank was exactly like how I drank the whole rest of my time drinking, because I remember everything was in a red Solo cup, and I literally had no idea what I was drinking. I mean, whatever was being poured in that glass, if it was going to get me, I drank for the effect, and I didn't care about the taste. I didn't care about any of that. And there was just a consumption. There was like a switch that went off or a trigger that I just felt the need to drink as much as I could. I don't know if I was trying to prove myself or what the heck the deal was, but I just started drinking like crazy. And so the end of that night, on the way back to my buddy's house, I had to have him pull over so that I could get sick. And it was it was just about as violent as you could imagine, getting sick. For whatever reason, when I get sick and vomit, I pop like every blood vessel in my face. So it's very noticeable. And so that happened. So then I proceeded to lie about that, what happened to my parents. And then I told them this story about weightlifting, and I was trying to max out, and the bar came down on my chest, and I popped all these blood vessels in my face. So they didn't really, I don't think they believed me, but they didn't really push it too much further. So that was my first time drinking, and I'll never forget, like, the next day, other than trying to figure out the lies I was going to formulate to tell my parents, I couldn't wait to do it again. And that's kind of the underlying message there, that man, I've been through a lot of things in my life where, you do something like that, or you do something that's like kind of crappy, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that again. I mean, that was ridiculous. I mean, like, the old adage of, burning yourself on a hot stove. I'm not going to touch that hot stove again. But for whatever reason, and I know that today that it's the disease of alcoholism, I was drawn to that, and I couldn't wait to get it as much as I could, as often as I could, from then on. And that, that really was like that was a weekend thing, normal high school drinking. It got me in some trouble and throughout my high school. And, we for instance, went to a party one time, and the girl that was supposed to have a party didn't show up. So me and like 4 of my buddies decided to tip her car over in the middle of the busy street in Omaha. And then we just went to Burger King like nothing was right, like we always did after football games. And, so stuff like that, the law didn't like that. And they were trying to figure out who did that, and so that kind of haunted me through a lot of my high school. I got pulled over without a headlight and had some marijuana in my pocket, and sat a weekend in jail over that. And they were constantly trying to get me in for fingerprints and pin me for this car deal. And but fortunately, I had a father that had been through that stuff, so we were able to lie our way out of it pretty well, and say that there's nothing you can prove. It wasn't me, and I never really paid any consequences for that until I got sober. Fortunately, through the amends process, I was able to make that right. So that's those are some things that I went through, and I again, there was no thought of really any consequence or anything like that going through that stuff. It was really just about finding that the next time that we were able to have fun and drink. And in the middle of that, something that was on my 4-step that I feel that really bothered me was my junior year. I took a girl to prom from another school, and we couldn't drive, so it had to be, I don't know, you can't drive till you're 16 in Omaha. So at any rate, neither of us could drive, so we had a ride there. And I had some buddies there that at the prom showed up, and they said, "Hey, we're going to Charlie's house to drink," and I said, "Man, I'm going with you." And we just took off, disappeared, and left that poor girl standing there. And that's something even now, having a daughter, that bothers me even more so. But at the time of doing a 4-step, it really, really bothered me that I would do that to someone. And again, just kind of showed my self-centeredness. I mean, I was willing to do whatever it took to get that, to get the alcohol to drink. And it didn't matter who you were, who was in front of me. And I didn't want to ask her if we want to go, because there was a chance that she might say no. So I just went and left her. And then, that turned into my sister seeing her on the curb crying, and my parents coming to pick my sister up and seeing her on the curb crying. And then I can only imagine what her parents thought, upon coming to pick her up and stuff like that. So those are the things that probably sounds really stupid to you guys, but it haunted me. And because you just don't, I don't know if it was whether it was, thank God for the religious upbringing that I had or whatever, but you just don't treat people that way. And so I'd done things like that. There's many other situations where, just extremely selfish and self-centered through that. Out of high school, went to play baseball at college at W University. And again, my drinking was at full flight there. And they won the NAIA national championship that year that I was on the team as a freshman. And I acted as if I was one of the seniors, that had been through was ready to graduate. And so I didn't go to class. Somehow I thought it was just going to work itself out. But I went to baseball practice and I went to all the parties for sure. And man, they were fun. We had fun. Like Todd was saying, we had a lot of fun, drinking at those with the upperclassmen and stuff. And, again, consequences down the road, just a few months down the road was that, hey, Dave, we don't want you at the school anymore because you have all Fs. And so that was a short-lived deal as well. And then from there was just kind of really blurry, because I was drinking a lot more, and I blacked out when I drank quite a bit. And at that point, and I had a girlfriend, I remember, and we lived together for a little bit, and she left me, and I thought, oh man, because we lived the same way. We were doing a lot of different substances other than alcohol, and we were just like on this, almost like felt like we were on the run, almost, kind of living this just this crazy, like, oh, we're just free, and then she left, and I thought, oh boy, I must be a lot worse than I thought. And in the meantime of that, I was on probation, and I remember I had to go into the probation officers to take a UA once a month for like 6 months in a row. And I literally knew what day I had to go in there. And every month I would be the night before, like sitting there, at my buddy's house, and we'd be drinking. And it would start off with this. My buddy would say, Dave, why are you going to drink? You got to go tomorrow morning to do a UA. Right. And so now my buddies are, kind of like my parents, and I'm like, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm just going to have a couple. And then needless to say, about 4 a.m, I'd be, drinking a ton of water and these flushing out pills from GNC, and just trying to flush my system so that I could go take this UA in the morning. Then I would go and I'd pass it somehow. And I still, to this day, have no idea how that happened. Those pills really work. So if you guys want, if anybody's interested, I can give you the name later. But the thought process with that was, I would think to myself in that situation, man, I'm not going to do that again. And then 30 days would go by, and I'd be in the same exact spot. And that literally was for 6 months. So that was the first time that I ever was I guess tasked with trying to control my drinking in my life. And I thought, man, I can't, I don't have control. It's like the first time I started thinking that, like, of all times to try to not drink just the one night, and I couldn't do it. And so there was those thoughts. And then my girlfriend left me, and I was living with my grandmother. And again, kind of that on the run thing, because I couldn't pay to live anywhere. My grandmother was the only one that would allow me to live with her. And my girlfriend was kind of shacking up with this upstairs after we lived in it was a weird deal. We lived in a rental for a little bit that we weren't paying rent either. It was my father that was doing that. So she leaves, and then my aunt, who had been sober for about 1.5 years, showed up to my grandmother's house that day. The same day that she left, and asked me to go to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And I still, again, I know today is my higher power, but I said, my head was like, absolutely not. And I said, yes. And that's when we first went to that Foxhall group. and she told me, you might want to dress a little nice. And I mean, I had the nicest stuff I had on, and I was just like off the streets, I mean, I had the holy jeans and stuff. And I walked in there and again, I judged right away. I compared, differences. And that's why I enjoy sharing so much, is because I truly believe that if Alcoholics Anonymous can work for somebody like me, that it can work for anyone. And just simply because I was so narrow-minded, I was so judgmental, and I have no idea why, other than it was my alcoholism. Because we don't come here with things are going good. It isn't like I was driving a Jaguar up to the meeting and, hey, I was still managing okay, but kind of had a little drinking problem. That wasn't my experience. I mean, I was like, there's nothing left, to do. And so in between there, I had some outpatient treatment I had been to, and some different things that are worked within that as well, that I would show up to and lie and say I was sober. And then I'd have my stepsister, stop on the way home, and we'd grab a couple 40 ounces and I'd slam those real quick and then go home to my parents' house. Like, other than just drinking for the effect, there was no other purpose to be drinking, because I just went and sat in their house and lied to them that I was sober, basically. And, we were talking about this before the meeting about, thinking that I'm getting over on somebody, thinking that oh man, I'm such a good liar. I'm really cheating these guys. I'm really, I'm getting one over on them. And all while my life is just complete crap. And so I go to the meeting, and she walks me to the back of the meeting and walks me up to this guy. She says, "Meet Tim," and she walked away. And I felt like abandoned, like I was the little like abandoned kid. I mean, because that was about my maturity at that point. It was I literally felt like a 5-year-old that was like, where'd she go? And this guy's in front of me, and he says, "Hey, I'm Tim, and I'll be your sponsor." And I'm like, okay. And I have no idea what a sponsor is and anything like that. And so we go out afterwards, and he talks with me about his experience and stuff like that. And it was kind of interesting, because really the only thing I remember out of that is that Tim's life seemed to look pretty good. That's really all I remember, as well as everyone else in that room. But I thought there was definitely some drug dealers in the group, because I'm like, there's no way these people are this happy, looking this good, without some sort of fake something going on behind all this, And because, like Todd mentioned, I lived that way too. I just, there was always some sort of scheme behind what I was doing. There was always some sort of plan. And I come across like this nice guy. That was the most deceitful thing about it. I come across like this, good old little Catholic grade school kid, right? And I was the furthest thing from it. And I truly didn't realize that until I did a 4-step in Alcoholics Anonymous. That was the first time I'd ever, people I hung out with and stuff like that, taking a personal inventory was never part of our language. You know what I mean? It was like, sweep as much as you can under the rug and just wait for people to forget about it. Or we're all going to go over to somebody's house and, make them pay a consequence, or, that's just kind of how we live. And so I came here, and Tim said he'd be my sponsor, and he told me 4 things to do. And one of them was to read the big book every day, at least a couple pages a day, because he said something smart, Alec, about that. I don't think you can comprehend any more than that based on what, how I see you look. Which he was right. And then was to get on my knees in the morning and at night and just thank you and a please, that way. And then call him every day and go to a meeting every day. And it was 90 meetings in 90 days was what I was tasked with. And it took me a year to get my 90 meetings in 90 days. Tyler got his 90 meetings in 90 days quicker than I did, which is kind of really amazing. So it took me a year because I could not grasp the concept that meant a meeting every day for 90 days. So I would try to, again, manipulate, cheat the system kind of. And I'd say, hey man, Tim, I wanna, go do this, and I'll go to 2 meetings tomorrow. And he'd be like, well, you can do what you want, but you gotta start over. And I was willing to take that consequence, saying, okay, I'm gonna go do this. And so that's why it took me a year to get to that point. I wouldn't suggest that to anyone or recommend it, but and so those were the 4 things. And I was told that was, the actions or of working the first 3 steps. Those doing those 4 things, and I could comprehend that, I could grasp that, and I still do that to today to anybody that I sponsor. It's the same deal, because that's what's really cool about this. I when I'm thinking about before getting up speaking, and the anxiety and the nerves and this and so on, but really it's really simple. It's just my experience, and that's all. But my head wants to kind of like make it sound better, I could add this into the story or something like that and make it sound better. But it's real simple when I just share my experience. And that's the same way with working with other people in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, thank God for Tim, because he's really saved my life. He did. And, today, he had went back out and drank. And again, it was my first example of the cunning and baffling power of alcoholism, because here was a guy that was 5 years sober when he started sponsoring me and seemed to have the everything going for him. And the next thing after about 8 or 9 years, he went back out. And again, I had to get a different sponsor, but it was really eye opening for me that this is real. And so we went through the steps and we worked through them, and he gave me the 4-step to do, and I always say it took me 2 months and a morning to do my 4th step, because he gave it to me and I sat on it for 2 months, and then finally he's got had enough, and he said it was I believe it might have been Thursday night men's big book study. He said, where are you at with the 4th step? Enough's enough, kind of and I said, well, I've been working on it, which I hadn't been. And so he said, we're doing it Saturday morning or Saturday at noon. So I was like, oh, okay. In my head, I'm thinking, okay, I got, tonight, which would be Thursday night, Friday night, whatever. And then, Saturday morning to work on it. Well, of course I put it off until Saturday morning, and I woke up. I remember going to bed Friday night, and I was just so fearful of geez, I didn't, haven't done it, and I got to get up and do it. And, but in my case, it really, once I started writing, things just really started flowing. A lot of things started coming out, and it was, I don't want to say easy, but the pen just seemed to be almost moving by itself. It was really weird. And, so I wrote down my 4th step, and then we went together and we drove around for a couple hours and did my 5th step. And his emotional reaction to my 5th step was way way less than what I thought it should have been. I thought I was waiting, expecting something. He just drove around and hardly, made any sort of an emotion. But what he did at the beginning, before I started reading mine, was that he shared a few things about him. And a couple of which that really made me feel like kind of a panty waste. I'm like, again, I think, I need to expand on my story or whatever. I was like, oh man, I feel like I need to come up with some better stuff, and I mean, who thinks that way, right? Who thinks they need to make their story or past seem worse than it is? And so he shared that to me, and what it did was it pulled out one thing that I didn't write down on there. And he said, I would suggest, if you're like me, there's probably something you haven't written down. I would suggest starting with it. And I just came out, you know what I mean? And then I went through the rest of it. And so, again, that's the way when I've been working with others and try to do that with others and doing a 5th step with them or being on the other end of receiving a 5th step, I do the same exact thing. Try to do the same thing. And in some situations it has pulled some stuff out that, maybe they weren't going to, talk about. And so I'm very thankful that he was willing to do that with me. And so I said all that and felt crappy, really. I mean, I just didn't, I don't, I mean, there was somewhat of a relief that I got that out there, but I kind of felt crappy. And I remember going back to my apartment and doing the 6th and 7th step for an hour and completely underestimated that at that point in my sobriety. And I did that, but I took the action. I did what it said in the big book. And then we started working on the A step. And for me, that was really where things started showing themselves in the sense of a higher power, because I had like a half a dozen things on my A step that I was convinced that would never present themselves to me to be able to make amends for. And all 6 of them presented themselves to me in a pretty quick fashion, pretty short time. And one of them was that girl that I tipped her car over. And so trust me, I was negotiating with my sponsor that there was 4 other people, and can we divide what I think that car was worth by 4 or 5, and trying to do that. But it's funny because I negotiate things that are gonna pay huge dividends in my life, you know, like it, and that's why I still have to have a sponsor today. But so we sat down. He said, no, we need to figure out what that's worth. And quite honestly, you probably ought to just ask them what you think it's worth. So I went and met this girl, and she's married by this point. So I met her and her husband, and I was really surprised they let me in their house. I mean, again, being on that side of it, I didn't even think twice about taking that action, but having, been in there and where I'm going to go into their house, it gave me a whole new perspective. And so I'm sitting in there, and she goes, well, I'm going to have to talk to my dad, to see what the value is, because they technically bought me the car. So then I'll never forget, I left there, and the anxiety and the emotions of going into that situation, then coming back out. And again, I'm back to negotiation mode. I'm like, Tim, can you believe this? They wouldn't even tell me how much they think it's worth. She needs to check with their dad, and they're going to screw me. They're going to say this thing's worth 10 grand. And then what, And he goes, Dave, just let it play out and see what they say. And if we feel like it's way out of the realm, then we'll work with it then, which has kind of been the case my whole life. Like, let it just play out, and we'll deal with the actual facts of what's going on. So they came back and they said $1,500, and which was a legit, figure. And but keep in mind, at this point in my life, I'm sharing an apartment with a fellow member of Alcoholics Anonymous, that my share of the rent is $175. His is $200, because his room's about a foot bigger. He had the suite room. And I had trouble. I mean, he had to front me the money a couple months, to where because he was sober about 2 years longer than me. And luckily he did that. But I had trouble coming up with that, so that's kind of where I am financially in my life. And so I'm working and I'm doing some sort of telemarketing, thinking that somehow I get some sort of bonus for sales or something like that. And all of a sudden I have this $1,500 within a pretty quick time, compared to not being able to come up with $175 for my gosh darn rent. So I'm back in front of them and making amends. And man, the power of that and the spirit in the room, just like being here now with all you, and the spirit within the room of making that amends was incredible. There was no denying that there was a higher power at that point, and that had given me the ability to, through Alcoholics Anonymous, to be in that situation and to be repaying that. So I was able to do that. And then another one that was really tough for me was one to my family. And my aunt and uncle employed me when I was unemployable, and they had some corn stands around Omaha, and they all deal with cash, and there's a fanny pack that you wear, and I was scheming and scamming, and I thought that they should have been paying me more, and again, being where I am now and looking back at that, the audacity that I had is quite remarkable to think that way. But So I would take 20. If somebody gave me $40, I'd take 20, put it in the fanny pack, and then the other 20 would go in my pocket. So I stole from my aunt and uncle, and so arranged to meet with them, and I met with them, and this time I had the money going into it. So it was about $600 that we figured that I stole, and that's the way it came to that with my sponsor, and had that in an envelope and sat down with him, Cindy and Pat, and said, I was wrong for what I had done, and this is what I had done, and because in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm here to make that right, and here is this, and if you don't feel like it's proper or enough or whatever, please let me know, and gladly pay you whatever you feel like you're owed. And they took the envelope, and they said, the look in their eyes, of taking that was really powerful. And then they took it and they said, people, being in this business over, they had been doing it for like 15, 20 years. And they said, we know every year people are stealing money from us. And they said, but you're the first one that's ever come and owned up to it, or admitted fault and repaid it. And so I proceeded to explain to him that it wasn't me that was doing it. It was Alcoholics Anonymous, the program that was leading me down this path to take this sort of action. And they said, well, I don't know anything much about Alcoholics Anonymous, but I just keep doing it, was kind of the final message. And I said, okay, Aunt Cindy, Uncle Pat, I will. And fast forward in that situation, I worked with my Aunt Cindy for about 5 years later. I worked with her for like 3-4 years within a family business. And there's no way in the world I would have been able to do that had I not, made that amend with her. And we had she's just a tremendous people. The type of people that would do anything for you. And and then the final one was where the car lot where I shot out all those windows when I was younger, and I put that on my 5th step, and it was HP Smith Ford was the name of the dealership, and again there was other people involved, so of course I was trying to scheme and negotiate that there was others involved, and do I really have to own up to the 2,000 windows that were busted out instead of just if there's 4 people, maybe I only need to own up to 500 of them or whatever. And that's just what I was doing. And I did not think I would be able to make that, because that dealership had changed hands 3 or 4 times since I'd been younger. And when I say I'm a kid, I'm like 12 or 13 years old. So it's not like I'm a 8-year-old kid out there doing this stuff. And I definitely knew better. And the law was, after us to, try again, kind of like the car tipping thing. And so through actually my Aunt Cindy and Uncle Pat's, one of their children was dating a young gal, and just so happened that we're at this family function, and we're just in a conversation, and she says her last name is Smith, and then they go on to talk about, my dad owned a car dealership when we were younger, and I'm like, I like literally looked up at the sky because I was, and I'm like, this is incredible. So I got his information from her, and I called my sponsor right away, and I said, man, HB Smith, I got his information. So I arranged to meet with him, and I met with him at a restaurant, and I told him what I had done, and thankfully he had said that the insurance took care of it, and not to worry about it, but he appreciated the fact that I was a good citizen, and he said, just continue to be a good citizen, and you're on a good track, so to speak. And again, I told him it was Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff like that. But those type of situations were living proof for me that higher power was out there, and that I was just the one that was not seeking him. And to fast forward a little bit, I got married in Alcoholics Anonymous to my beautiful wife, and too bad she couldn't come tonight, because you guys would have definitely agreed that I outkicked my punt coverage on with her, and she's at home with a little puppy that we got, and I'm sure not liking it too much, but we got married, and we have 2 children, and that have been grown up in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we our wedding was probably 300 people there, probably 200 Alcoholics Anonymous members, and the other 100 family. And that was the kind of wedding we had and stuff. And it's provided me a type of life that, I don't want to say that I always dreamed of, because I don't know that I dreamed of it as a little kid, of being, that I was just out to destroy crap when I was younger. That was my mindset. And, but it has given me a life that has, a lot of inner peace. And I like what Todd was talking about, relating it to nature. I remember driving down the street. I was sober for a short period, and I got to the meeting, and I walked up to Tim right away, and I was all like excited, and and I said, Tim, I said, look at these trees, and they were orange and yellow, and just it was autumn, and that happens every year, and so I was all excited to tell him that, and he, of course, his sarcastic, he says, yeah, Dave, that's been happening for 22 years. I'm glad you could finally see that, and I'm glad you pulled your head out of your rear to be able to see that. But those kind of instances were some of the first, like, wow, I mean, this is I felt like prior to Alcoholics Anonymous, I walked away with or walked around with my hand planted, almost glued to my face, and it felt that narrow and that closed off from everybody else. And then coming here and by really just giving people money back that they borrowed me for a lot of years, and just doing the right thing and sticking my hand out, greeting people at meetings. And I looked at people's shoes for a long time, and I couldn't even look at people in the face. And again, that's when Tim would say, someday not only are you going to look them in the eye, but you're going to know their name, and you're going to know a little bit about them. And I was like, there's no way, Tim. In my head, I'm thinking, there's no way, and, but it was doing all those little things. And then I got a license back, and I started picking people up for meetings. And I remember, sponsoring one of my first guys, and I was sitting down, and he lived about in Plattsmouth, Nebraska, which was south of Omaha, and it was very inconvenient to drive down to pick him up, and so I go down there and pick him up, and of course on the way down there, I'm thinking to myself how terrible this is, that I have to go pick this low life up and bring him up to a meeting, and all of a sudden I pull in, and he invites me in. And so I go into his house, and he's married, and he's probably the age that was probably mid-40s, I would guess, at that point. And he's married, and he has some kids, a couple kids. I don't even know how many, actually, honestly, but because a couple of them came out of the different rooms of the house. But we're sitting in there, and I'm thinking the whole time, I'm like thinking to myself, what the heck, And he starts, his wife starts talking, and you can just tell she's like almost frantic that he gets and stays sober, and it was one of those moments where I just thought, man, I'm a, 22, almost 23-year-old young punk. I mean, that's how I felt. I felt like a punk kid that's sitting here in this situation, and I have 6 months of sobriety to share with this gentleman. And, his wife is just desperately, his family is kind of dependent on it, I mean, really. And again, it was one of them times where I just realized that, and I called Tim, of course, right after I got disconnected from him, because we rode together to the meeting. And that night at the meeting, I'm sure I pulled Tim aside, and I said, man, I can't, it's like my past really can be of value, and because I was just like sharing this stuff with them, and they're just what has happened to me over the last 6 months and being sober, that I almost couldn't believe was coming out of my mouth. You know what I mean? And so it was just it was a really cool experience. And I, working with other alcoholics has saved my life up to current state. I mean, I have, there's stuff in life that goes on and happens. And, I was notified in May that my company was going to eliminate the division of the company that I work for, and we're all going to be out of a job. And that was in May, and my last day working there will be tomorrow. Okay, officially. And through that process, because of what I've been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous, there was times where I was consumed with fear, but my thoughts would be, and what I see others do just naturally, is to work with other people. And I just try to get involved in other people's lives. And, thank God, he just dropped a couple guys in my lap that were newer in sobriety, and allowed me to participate in their life. And the beautiful thing of that is that it kept my mind busy to where I couldn't screw this deal up. Because trust me, I did. That negotiator, that hip, slick, and cool kind of deal, used car salesman, is still in me. And I remember I called my sponsors, Craig, and he's out of town, otherwise he'd be down here from Brookings. And I called him because I had a great idea. And I said, man, Craig, I said, my responsibility at this company is going to be pretty minimal. So I could get another job and I could be collecting 2 paychecks and so on and so on, spewed this grand idea that I had. And he just simply said, can you do that with character? And I just was like, yeah, all right, you're right. And I got off the phone, and that was probably 4 months ago. And, thank God for that, because what has transpired since then has brought, something I can't even believe in my life, another opportunity, another job that I'm, making more money than I was making before. And that would not, of and by myself, I would have screwed it all up. I would have went with the hip, slick, and cool Dave and tried to deceive people and try to do that sort of stuff. So I'm not anywhere close to perfect, and that's why I still need a sponsor. And that's even more importantly why I need to work with other alcoholics, because they remind me that what it's like. When we're standing out in the parking lot talking about somebody lying at drug court about how many meetings they're going to. That's me. You know what I mean? That's what I do. That's how I act. You know what I mean? And because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was able to lower my guard just enough to allow some goodness and some God to come into my life, into my heart, and see that was wow, that feels pretty good, but of and by myself, still left to my own devices, I will sometimes try to take the shortcuts. But I'm very thankful that I've had the opportunity to share here tonight with you guys. And I want to also thank everyone that came down from Brookings to the meeting as well, because that's cool. I mean, that's really neat to see that. And hopefully, I know we came down when Travis spoke, quite a few of us came down too. And that was cool to kind of be a part of that. And just to see recovery in action, and see people that are all hip, slick, and cool, and want to try to cheat if they can, but we're all here in this, in doing the right thing and living the right way, and it's only because of God and Alcoholics Anonymous that's able to happen in my life, so I'm glad to be here sober, and I'll end with that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Todd and Dave, if you guys could stand over here, everybody can come and thank them for sharing their story. We appreciate you being here tonight, and let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Well,